The wind howled through the abandoned highway as the sun began to dip beneath the horizon, casting a fiery orange glow over the stretch of road. Above it, on a towering bridge overpass, stood Sergeant Ash Parker, leaning against the concrete barrier, staring down at the winding road below. His military fatigues fluttered slightly in the breeze, and his sunglasses were perched low on his nose, hiding the steely gaze that had seen more than its fair share of combat. He wasn't just any soldier. He was the kind of guy who had a reputation that preceded him, a reputation forged in the chaos of war zones and sharpened through years of special operations. Most people knew to stay out of his way. But, as Ash scanned the horizon, a low rumble broke his thoughts. The sound of engines. At first, he thought it was just another truck barreling down the highway, but the rumbling grew louder. Ash's eyes narrowed as the noise came closer. A motorcycle gang, roaring down the road, engines growling like beasts on a hunt. Their leader, a man with a menacing scar over his left eye, revved his engine as he led the pack, a smirk plastered across his face. "Look at that," the biker leader, Hawk Calloway, called out to his crew. "Another lonely soldier thinking he owns this bridge. Let's have some fun with him." Behind Hawk, a group of 5 bikers followed, each with a reputation for chaos. They were the Iron Vultures, a notorious gang known for taking what they wanted and leaving destruction in their wake. There was Viper, the fast-talking mechanic with a penchant for knives. Razor, the silent but deadly enforcer with tattoos that ran like dark rivers across his arms. And then there was Sizzle, the fiery-tempered woman who never shied away from a fight. The others were just as dangerous in their own way, each one a force to be reckoned with, but none of them knew what was about to come. Ash remained motionless, his gaze steady. He had dealt with arrogant bikers before, never one to back down from a challenge. As the gang approached the overpass, Hawk slammed his bike to a halt, sending gravel flying. He dismounted with a swagger, cracking his knuckles as his crew parked behind him. "You lost, soldier?" Hawk taunted, his voice dripping with mockery. "This here's our territory. You're gonna have to move along if you don't want trouble." Ash slowly removed his sunglasses and tucked them into his shirt pocket. His piercing blue eyes locked onto Hawk's. The bikers, looking to start a fight, smirked. Ash didn't move an inch. He knew how to handle these situations without a single word. Hawk took a step forward, leaning into Ash's personal space. "You hear me, soldier? I said move. Or do we need to teach you a lesson?" Ash glanced at the approaching bikers, his mind racing. It wasn't the first time he had encountered fools like these, but something about Hawk's cocky attitude rubbed him the wrong way. He straightened, slowly pulling a small, black penknife from his pocket and flipping it open with a flick of his wrist. "You've got about 3 seconds to rethink this, Hawk," Ash said, his voice calm and steady, though every syllable was filled with menace. "Or else, you and your crew are going to find out why they call me the Ghost." The bikers laughed, thinking Ash was bluffing. Viper pulled out a gleaming switchblade, twirling it in his hand. "Looks like your ghost is about to get cut down to size," he sneered. Before they could make a move, Ash was already in action. In a blur of motion, he dropped his knife and kicked the nearest biker in the chest, sending him tumbling off his bike. Razor lunged at him, but Ash sidestepped and elbowed him in the gut, then spun around to deliver a roundhouse kick to Sizzle's face, sending her sprawling to the ground. The gang was taken aback by the speed and precision of Ash's strikes. Hawk snarled, pulling a steel chain from his belt. "You'll regret that, soldier." But Ash didn't flinch. With a single swift motion, he grabbed the chain mid-swing, yanking it from Hawk's hands and using the momentum to slam the biker leader into the side of the bridge. The sound of bone meeting concrete echoed through the air. Hawk groaned, dazed but not out. Viper rushed at Ash with a flurry of wild stabs, but Ash was a blur of motion, ducking and weaving like a shadow. He disarmed Viper in seconds, sending the switchblade flying into the river below. The remaining bikers, now unsure of their chances, hesitated for a moment. But that moment was all Ash needed. With a sharp twist, Ash incapacitated Razor with a well-placed lock, forcing him to drop to his knees in pain. Sizzle, seeing the fight turning against them, pulled a gun from her jacket, aiming it at Ash. "You're dead," she yelled, her hand shaking with fury. But before she could pull the trigger, Ash grabbed her arm, twisting it until she dropped the weapon. With a quick move, he swept her legs out from under her, sending her crashing to the ground. The remaining bikers, now scared out of their minds, backed away slowly. Hawk, bloodied and battered, groaned from his place against the concrete. He was starting to realize that they'd picked the wrong soldier to mess with. "Get out of here," Ash growled, his voice cold as ice. "Before I change my mind." The bikers scrambled to their bikes, helping each other up and quickly retreating down the road, their pride shattered. Ash stood on the bridge, watching them leave. His heart still raced from the fight, but he felt no joy. It was just another day in the life of a soldier. But as the bikers disappeared into the distance, Ash noticed something. Hawk had dropped a small, black leather wallet during the fight, and Ash picked it up. He opened it and saw something that made his blood run cold, a symbol that he recognized from his past. It was a symbol associated with a shadowy organization, one that had been tracking his every move for years. This wasn't just a random gang. Something bigger was at play. Ash's hand clenched around the wallet. The fight was far from over. As the last of the bikers sped off into the distance, Ash stood motionless, his eyes locked on the wallet in his hand. His pulse quickened, not from the fight, but from the realization that something far more sinister was at work here. The symbol on the wallet was one he hadn't seen in years. It was the insignia of the Syndicate, a covert organization with deep ties in the underworld, military contractors, and even high-ranking government officials. They were ruthless, and they never forgot a grudge. Ash had crossed paths with them before, during a mission gone wrong in South America. He'd barely escaped with his life, and it seemed like they'd never let go of the threat he posed to their operation. His instincts kicked in. He knew better than to let this go, to just walk away. If the Syndicate was involved, this wasn't just a street brawl. It was the beginning of something much bigger. He tucked the wallet into his pocket, scanning the darkening highway around him. The wind had picked up again, whispering secrets through the trees. A moment of eerie silence passed before he heard it, the faint sound of an engine. But it wasn't the rumbling of motorcycles. It was the smooth purr of a car, and it was coming toward the bridge. Ash didn't wait to see who it was. He slipped behind the concrete pillar, hidden in the shadows, and checked the clip of his Glock 19, ensuring it was loaded. He had learned the hard way that trust was a luxury in his line of work. The car slowed as it approached the overpass. A sleek, black sedan with tinted windows rolled to a stop just before the bridge. Ash could barely make out the silhouette of a figure through the darkened glass. It was too quiet, too deliberate. The driver's side door opened, and out stepped a tall man in a sharp suit. His hair was dark, combed back, and his eyes, sharp, calculating, scanned the area, his gaze stopping just shy of Ash's hiding spot. This wasn't just anyone. Ash knew exactly who it was. Victor Rhodes, the man who had been running the Syndicate's operations ever since the last mission had gone south for Ash. The very man who had ordered his execution. Ash had barely survived the last time they met, but there was no running now. Rhodes looked around once more, his cold eyes piercing the darkness. "I know you're there, Sergeant Parker," he called, his voice smooth, almost mocking. "You can come out now. I'm not here to fight. Not this time." Ash's mind raced. He couldn't risk a direct confrontation yet. He needed information, something to put the pieces together. He stepped out from behind the pillar slowly, his movements calculated. "What do you want, Rhodes?" His voice was low, full of venom, but controlled. Rhodes smiled, his expression predatory. "What I want, Ash, is to end this little game we've been playing. You're a thorn in my side, and I can't let you keep running. The Syndicate wants what's ours." He stepped forward, his tone suddenly turning businesslike. "And you're going to help me get it." Ash's hand tensed on his Glock, but he kept it lowered. "I don't help criminals." Rhodes chuckled, as though Ash's refusal was amusing. "Oh, but you will. You see, it's not about helping us, it's about survival. You either help us, or I'll make sure you'll never get the chance to escape again." His smile widened. "You've made too many enemies, Ash. You're running out of time." Before Ash could respond, the sound of a second car engine roared in the distance. This one was different, heavier, more powerful. Ash's senses went on high alert. Rhodes didn't flinch. He was expecting this. He didn't need to look back, but Ash did. The headlights from the approaching vehicle gleamed through the trees like an oncoming storm. It wasn't long before it came into view. A massive, black SUV with military-grade tires, windows tinted so dark that no one inside could be seen. The vehicle pulled up beside Rhodes' sedan, and the door opened. A woman stepped out, a tall, striking figure clad in tactical gear. Her short blonde hair was tied back in a tight ponytail, and her eyes were sharp, calculating. She walked with the kind of confidence that could make anyone second-guess themselves. Ash's heart skipped a beat. He knew exactly who she was. Elena Blaze Novak, former Special Forces, Ash's old partner. She had vanished years ago, presumed dead after a mission went wrong. But here she was, standing right in front of him. She was supposed to be buried in some forgotten corner of the world, but instead, she was here, working with the Syndicate. Ash, Elena's voice was calm but cold, like ice. Long time no see. Her lips curled into a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. I never thought we'd meet like this, but here we are. Ash's mind raced, his thoughts scrambling for answers. Elena had always been unpredictable, a loose cannon, but she'd never been one to side with the enemy. Not like this. What are you doing here, Elena? He demanded. This is insane. The Syndicate's using you. She tilted her head, her gaze never wavering. No, Ash. You've got it wrong. I'm not the one who's been used. I've got a job to do. And this time, I'm not the one who's going to walk away. Before Ash could react, Rhodes took a step forward, cutting off any further words. Enough talking. You've got a choice, Parker. You can help us find what we're looking for. Something that could change the world, or you can die here. The Syndicate is done playing games. He motioned to Elena, and she stepped closer, her expression unreadable. Your move. Ash's mind raced. The stakes had just escalated beyond anything he could have predicted. What had the Syndicate found that was worth all of this? And why was Elena working with them? One thing was clear. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a race to stop something that could change everything. But Ash wasn't ready to back down. Not now. Not when the stakes were this high. And with that, he made a choice. You want to play this game, Rhodes? Ash's voice was steady, cold as steel. Then let's play. The battle for what was hidden in the dark corners of the world was just beginning, and Ash Parker was ready for whatever came next. The standoff lingered in the air, charged with tension. Ash's fingers grazed the grip of his Glock, his mind calculating every possible move. Rhodes, his smug smile never faltering, watched him closely. Elena stood beside him, her cold eyes locked on Ash, waiting for him to make his move. You're making a mistake, Ash, Elena said, her voice tinged with regret. This isn't the same game we used to play. Things have changed. You don't understand the stakes. Ash's gaze never left Rhodes. I understand perfectly. You've sold your soul, Elena. You're with them now. I can't change that, but I can stop you. The sound of the wind rustling through the trees seemed to grow louder as Ash shifted his stance. He had no intention of letting this go. Not again. Not after everything he had sacrificed to escape the Syndicate's grip. Rhodes raised his hand, signaling to Elena. It's time to end this, he said calmly. Take him. But before Elena could make a move, Ash was already in motion. He fired a quick shot, just enough to graze Elena's arm. She didn't flinch. Instead, her eyes hardened, and she drew her own weapon, aiming directly at him. I told you. Ash, she said, voice steady. You can't win this fight. Ash didn't back down. He darted behind the nearest concrete pillar, narrowly avoiding a bullet from Elena's weapon. He ducked low, using his military training to keep a step ahead. But just as he prepared to make a move, a sharp, echoing crash filled the air. A third vehicle, a military transport, barreled onto the scene, its lights blinding in the darkness. The sound of boots hitting the pavement followed as heavily armed soldiers poured out, surrounding Rhodes and Elena. They weren't here for Ash. They were here for Rhodes. Get down, barked one of the soldiers, pulling Rhodes to the ground. Ash watched in disbelief as the situation shifted in an instant. Elena, her face a mask of confusion, glanced at Rhodes, who seemed taken aback by the sudden betrayal. "You think you can just walk away with this?" The soldier in charge growled, keeping his gun trained on Rhodes. "The Syndicate's days are over." Ash rose from his position, his eyes widening as he realized who the soldiers were. They were Division X, a covert branch of the government tasked with dismantling the Syndicate. Ash had crossed paths with them before, trusted allies in the shadows, but even they didn't know what the Syndicate was truly capable of. The soldier in charge, a towering figure with a scar running down his face, stepped toward Ash. "You did well, Parker. We've been tracking Rhodes for months. Looks like you did the hard work for us." Ash exhaled slowly, his tension easing, but his mind was still spinning. "So, you knew about this?" The soldier nodded. "We knew everything, including your old partner's involvement." Elena looked at Ash, her expression a mixture of disbelief and anger. "You set me up," she spat. "You had no idea this was coming." Ash's voice was unwavering. "I didn't set you up, Elena. I was just trying to stop them, and I will, whatever it takes." Rhodes, now on his knees, stared at the soldiers, his face contorted in rage. "You can't do this. Do you have any idea what you're getting into?" The soldier in charge smirked. "Actually, we do. And it's over." With a series of swift commands, the Division X team moved in, cuffing Rhodes and his men. Elena stepped back, clearly torn between her past loyalty and the reality of the situation. As the soldiers began to take control, Ash turned to her one last time. "It's not too late, Elena. You can walk away. They'll take you in for questioning, but you don't have to be one of them." "Not yet." She met his gaze for a long moment, then shook her head slowly, a hint of something, regret, perhaps, flickering in her eyes. "It's too late for me, Ash," she whispered, before turning away, walking toward the soldiers. Ash watched her leave, his heart heavy with the weight of their shared history. Some battles were lost before they even began. Rhodes was loaded into the military transport, his furious protests falling on deaf ears. The remnants of the Syndicate, its power fractured, would fall apart without its leaders. The bridge overpass was silent again, the night air settling back into its usual rhythm. Ash stood there for a long moment, alone in the stillness, the cool wind brushing against his face. The fight was over, for now, but the war was far from finished. Ash had made his choice. The shadows would always call to him, but this time, he wasn't running. He was ready for whatever came next. And whatever it was, he'd be ready.